name is Matilda Tebbetts. I was born in 1830, and I lost my mother in the cholera epidemic of 1833. My father was very sick, but he was getting better, so he asked her to go tend to some neighbors who had come down with it. While she was there, she got word that my father had taken a turn for the worse, so she rushed back and found him in convulsions with one eye burst out of his socket. This caused her to fall into a swoon from which she never recovered. After that, my father was crippled from the cholera, so he sent me and my youngest siblings to live with my grandfather Buckner in Kentucky. We lived on his plantation, and this is where I was taught to be a proper young Southern lady. When I was 14 years old, my grandfather died, so I was sent to live with my sister Magdalene in northwest Arkansas and her husband. They became my guardians for a time. When I was 17, Jonas Tebbetts saw me walking and made the proper connections to be introduced to me. Jonas and I were to be married on May 15th, but his schedule as a circuit lawyer was very unpredictable. He happened to be in town in April, so he asked if we could move the wedding up. This I agreed to, although my wedding dress fabric had not yet arrived, and so I was married in this yellow lawn dress. After our marriage, we lived in rented houses in Fayetteville, where I learned to manage my household with the help of 3 slaves which I inherited from my grandfather Buckner's plantation. Jonas would travel around on the circuit, and he traveled to Little Rock. One time, he brought back a large amount of yellow flannel fabric. It was a beautiful material, but the color, such a color. I was not sure what to do with such fabric, but many times Jonas's clients would name their children after him, and I discovered that I would give this fabric to them, enough fabric for them to make baby clothes with. Jonas and I had 6 children, 5 of whom were born in Fayetteville. Clinton Hale was born a year after our marriage. Marion was born the next year. Edward was born in 1853 but died as a toddler. Lillian was born in 1856. Harry Waldron was born in 1857 but died 18 months later. And Annie was born in 1862 during the war. And then Howard was born in 1863 in Missouri. We built our real home in Fayetteville in 1853. And indeed, it was a real home. We made many, many memories and traditions there. And we planned to live there forever, but when the war came, it changed everything. At our house in Fayetteville, we had furniture shipped in from the east. We had beautiful gardens out in the front and groves in the back. I loved to live in our home in Fayetteville. Although Arkansas was a pro-Confederate state, Jonas and I were pro-Union. The town of Fayetteville itself changed hands many times. When General McCulloch was ordered to leave Fayetteville, there were orders to burn the buildings they were leaving. One of the buildings that was burned was a school that was across the street from our house. And this school had been used as an arsenal. And even though they attempted to get all of the gunpowder and ammunition out, there were still some shells and gunpowder left in the building. So when the building was set on fire, there were many sparks and flames that came over to our house. It was only through the efforts of my oldest son Hale and our slave Harris that our house was saved. After General McCulloch had burned Fayetteville, General Alexander Asboth came in and declared that Fayetteville was now under Union command. He asked Jonas for a flag to hang in the square, which he supplied. So we invited General Asboth to come to our house to dine, and he brought his dog York with him. During the meal, he would periodically feed York all of the best food from the table. Later my children mentioned that this might have been inappropriate, and I said, "This is war." Eventually, General Ben McCulloch had Jonas arrested, and while he was gone, I had to be strong at home for my family. However, we were ready to flee at any time. I kept gold pieces in a belt by my side, and I had the children go to sleep half dressed in case we had to flee during the night. After Jonas was arrested, The Confederate Army came and requested that I give them all of my blankets and draperies for their horses and for the men. I had the slaves take them out and beat them clean, and handed them over with as much grace as I could muster. As the Battle of Pea Ridge raged for 3 days, we could hear the booming of the cannons. The Confederates lost many of their head officers, and so the army was routed, and they began to retreat through Fayetteville. My slave Betty and I made cornbread with the few supplies that we had left, and we shared that with them along with tubs of water. The men seemed grateful. Jonas was arrested, but eventually the charges were dropped. But he still had to leave home for his own safety. The Union Army then came to Fayetteville under General Schofield. General Schofield camped near our house, keeping us safe. He sent word to us that we should be ready to leave with the army, so we packed our few belongings and got ready to leave with them. Thankfully, Jonas arrived before we left with dispatch orders for General Schofield. So he was with us when we left Fayetteville, and we left by army ambulance as baby Anna had taken sick the night before. I was afraid she would not survive the trip, but she did. Jonas and I and the children made it to Columbia, Missouri, where he bought a plantation he named Exilia. He acquired this by trading in some property, including our Fayetteville house. And we never lived in Fayetteville again.